This conference will now be recorded.
Very good. So welcome everybody to the Immersion Community Call of October 19th, 2021. Good morning and afternoon and evening for all of you in all the different regions. For today, we have on the schedule, assuming that somebody from ACF is present, an update from ACF with any outstanding or open questions that are to be asked to this community. There's going to be a bunch of updates from the project leads, which mostly John and myself, but also from some other activities that we're currently doing, starting off with the Immersion Requirements Revision 2, material compatibility, UL alignment, if Michael is present, that is. We're going to have a new glance at the latest version of the immersion cooling pitch deck on behalf of the entire immersion community, which I have to say it looks very good at this point in time. And we'll be asking for some feedback there as well. Then I want to spend a little bit of time with all of you to debrief the current lineup for the Global Summit, for the engineering sessions, and the remaining time we would like to spend on a plenary brainstorm with all the community members here present on which activities we should be focusing on for the upcoming year. The Global Summit is usually one of those milestones where we put a stake in the ground and focus our efforts again, establish projects and come up with ideas on which items are going to be most relevant for the upcoming year. Any questions regarding the agenda for today? Nope. All right, John, Don, I see that you've started up your camera already. That's great. Would you like to take the presentation? What is it?
Please,
Hamburger.
just for a moment, real quick.
Yep, sure. Here you go.
Actually, I want to comment on something just really briefly, if you allow me, Rolf, that it's a possibility of sharing the agenda ahead of time, maybe a couple of days before the meeting, so everybody knows what is going to be discussed.
Yeah, so normally we do share the agenda when it is established. This time it was not established until actually yesterday end of the day and this afternoon. So
okay. Real quick, the work streams that we have been doing at ACF have been submitted for review and through the pipeline. I finally figured out how to do that correctly. And those were two work streams. One is on connection standardization. The other was on recommendations for reference designs and best practice guidance in data centers. And I encourage the continued review of those from the attendees here. Any input would be great. What we've moved on to now in many of our discussions is we're looking at heat reuse. And what I would like to appeal to people is, do we have examples on people right now that would like to submit some sort of a example or case study where heat reuse has been successfully performed in data centers? What you're seeing on the screen is a spreadsheet of some examples that we have heard of. Facebook's one in Denmark. Ericsson has a facility at Stockholm Data Parks. Green Mountain is used heat reuse. There's a Weston building in Seattle. There's a project over in Wyoming, which is still early on. Interaction are some examples. And obviously the spreadsheet is very much at the beginning, but what I'm looking at doing is breaking down these by categories in terms of size. Denmark, or you're looking at about a 30 megawatt here. The data center type, one of the things with Facebook is they actually used a, I think it was 30 megawatt, but it was an air-cooled data center, and the waste heat was only 30 degrees centigrade, The reason it was driven by the local economy is kind of an interesting aspect. Is Denmark had used a district heating system that was powered or heated to a large extent by waste heat from the power plants. When they started shifting to renewable energy, there was less waste heat from the power plants, and they actually need it from the data centers as part of the story. So I'm going to pause for a second. I'm not ready to go through this. We're just starting. This is a work stream discussion, collecting things. Are there people on the call today that would have a case study or example that they would want to start preparing for a call or a discussion with the ACF group sometime in the future?
So Don, actually, I was waiting for the call later today, but we had a fantastic call yesterday with an organization in Finland called CSC, and they have the wet dream of heat reuse. We can go into the details later if you want, but we will have all the material, and they actually will present in our calls as soon as they are ready.
So
in 1 or 2 weeks.
That'll be the kind of coming theme. Is each week we're going to try to feature one or two. I have hopefully Cloud and Heat is going to be talking today. And Cloud and Heat, for those that don't know it, they use a much smaller model of heat reuse where they will take immersion cooled at 60-degree waste heat and use that in facilities and even in homes is what they're looking at. So they're looking at the edge. It's a different kind of application set, and you can see why I'm trying to break these down into categories, because there's a lot of things you can do with 500 kW of waste heat at 60 degrees that you can't do with 30 megawatts at 30 degrees or even 40 degrees. But the more we just talk about these things, the more they get socialized. Green Mountain has done everything from farming, agriculture type, to trout, to lobsters. They're trying everything they can to reuse their energy, and they have a very technical review on this. I'm looking forward to doing one of their studies as well. But Cosimo, I appreciate that. Was there anyone else before I hand over the mic back to Rolf?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, there's also a company in Canada called Mindful Energy who actually has patents in this area in the U.S. and Canada, where they're using they're reusing the heat in several areas, like in greenhouses and heating buildings and things like that. I can actually get in contact with them and see if they would be interested in presenting some information on that.
Yeah, and Kevin, this is Kristen Anderson. Kevin's my colleague. I would also add that they're looking for really high load factor heat requirements. So again, hospitals and those kinds of things also. They do have a fairly small footprint right now. They're talking about a couple of megawatts versus 30 megawatts, but it's still an interesting, it still I think would be an interesting case study.
That'd be fantastic.
I think
if you can somehow give me contact information, or I'll make sure that you're all invited and you can forward the invites to our weekly calls. Again, the first part of the step is just to cast a very broad net and make sure that people realize it's happening. And then the next step would be to try to figure out, what do we need to do to make it even more effective? And one of the key things obviously would be anything that can be done to increase the rejection temperature would greatly help that. Any other final things? Kristen, I appreciate it. I got Kevin, I got you. Anyone else I should be pinging on?
Yeah, I think the message, the ask is clear. So anybody who has interest in joining this discussion, please send your email to donmitchell@ocproject.net and join the advanced cooling facility calls. They're usually following the Immersion community calls and workgroup sessions.
Sounds great.
If you don't mind, I'll take this further now to the next topic. Don, thank you very much for your announcement.
And I'll get my mug off your screen.
Very welcome. Thanks, Don. So we're going into the requirements revision 2 update now. And I'll be taking that on myself. There is a link on the screen which I won't read out loud, but suffice to say, we're currently in the process of finalizing content. There's been an additional work package that took quite a bit of time to discuss through, to go through, which relates to signal integrity of electronics. And that is something that we've just gone through. We're in the finalizing stage of that as well. The schedule has been revised for the document completion. We are still in the finalization process, but we had to spend some more time on refining some of the items for alignment with UL and also for the signal integrity materials. Which means that the revised schedule, as on the screen right now, is the current working schedule. So we're looking at finalizing the next draft by the beginning of next month to be completely ready for a community presentation at the Global Summit. The original schedule was to have that community presentation in this call today, and before that it was scheduled for the previous monthly call. We're now scheduling that for a one-off presentation with the community at the Global Summit itself, which means that after the Global Summit, we'll be generating the final draft that will be ready for the IC submission, which is now projected for December, which means that we should be able to get it published before the end of the year. The revised schedule, so the activities for October and November are focused on finalizing the document. And the most significant updates that we have been working on, first of all, the new content also covers the qualification process for the immersion requirements. It contains some revised technology descriptions. We have spent quite a bit of time in the past year on extending the fluid specifications and making the specification requirements more meaningful, which means that for immersion cooling finds its origins in actually in transformer oils. So a lot of the standards based on fluid are still based on those kind of applications. And a good example of this is the dielectric constant and loss tangent, which relates to signal integrity, where we're now describing test methods or test parameters, which are much more meaningful for IT equipment instead of high voltage AC applications. Some new test methods will be developed, but we'll be taking that on, picking up the glove in close harmony with the UL organization, including global warming potential listings and ozone depletion potentials, as well for required reporting for used immersion fluids. There is also a new quality management requirement formulated in the document for the immersion fluids. And there is a new high availability classification which wasn't there in the original document to recognize any features that specifically address high availability requirements. Then to finish this off, the actual content stuff, a lot of work has been done to elaborate on the facility water system compatibility. This is a topic that will harmonize still with to greater detail also with Don's group from the advanced cooling facility group. But this chapter also contains better materials and quality guidelines for facility water systems. And then there's some more information on immersion-related uptime factors. So the whole document is a bit of a mix between a white paper and a specification document. And this has been made possible, we've made this possible by more clearly separating the actual requirements from the informational text. So throughout the document, there is a differentiation of different markings for specification requirements, optional requirements, and customer requirements. And these are all listed throughout the document, but also collated at the end of the document. I think I have a document version here open, so to give you a bit of an impression, I'll just scrolling through to places in the text. This is the current working document, and here you see in the text specification requirements which are listed, but also customer requirements. At the point of the customer requirements is that vendors will have to demonstrate that sufficient effort is made to accommodate compliancy by end users. These are important elements which need to be which people need to be aware of when using technologies like immersion technology, and the specification requirements are explicit requirements that mandates specific features or elements to be covered by an immersion vendor. And these requirements are spread out through the document, and I'm just scrolling to the bottom of the document to chapter 9. And this is where all the requirements throughout the document are collected and assembled in a clear overview, divided over specification requirements, optional requirements, and customer requirements. And this will form the basis for future qualification. Are there any questions regarding the work that is currently done for the immersion requirements? Okay, well, that's great. And I'll hand over to Punit and John. Which one of you would like? Do you want to share the screen, or shall I just click through the slides for you guys?
Yeah, just click through the slides. I think would be fine.
All right, good.
All right. Yeah, we're going to give you the update on some of the activities here from the Material Compatibility Focus Group. I've got to say, Punith has done a really great job as taking up activity as a co-lead in this group, has come on strong and is helping guide and resolve some outstanding issues, along with the continued collaboration from our bench of folks on the roster that are regular contributors and adding content and value to this whole activity. I'm going to have a little bit of overlap with Rolf. Our two-phase activity continues to gain momentum and is getting close to the sufficient level of content. But Rolf did mention this rather interesting topic that came up a little bit recently, really, in the overall scheme of things, considering signal integrity for high-speed data. And the Materials Compatibility Group is certainly involved in this dialogue as well, because we have quite a depth of knowledge and expertise here. Some of the things that we're looking at is to figure out which labs could really maybe facilitate this and which methods of test would align with more typically available equipment that wouldn't necessarily drive folks to go and invest in a lot of new equipment at a fairly big price tag to do some of this testing. I think we're getting a pretty good handle on the temperature range that we think we want to test it at, as well as the frequency range and the voltages. So that's coming to a close fairly well, but I would hesitate to say that it's all settled just yet. So as we get a little bit deeper dive into the equipment and methods of test, there may be some tweaks to some of those values that we would test at as well. So that's a work in progress, and people are very focused on that, and hence the overlap, because we have a fair number of the team that's in the material compatibility also involved in the immersion requirements. So it's taken a little bit of bandwidth of both groups to make sure that we bring this to closure fairly quickly. The matrix, which is basically, for those of you that are new and haven't heard this, a little bit repetitive for those of you who've seen this, this is a column by column, row by row listing. The columns being the different fluid types, whether they be synthetic, hydrocarbons, PFEs, whatever. And the rows being the materials that you would typically find in a server. And we have about 100 rows of different materials now. And I believe we're at 6 different fluid categories at the moment. We are still right at that 68% populated for everything combined. And I'll give you a little bit better look at where the various fluid categories are right now. But another important thing that we did progress on is the criteria for what would constitute something of curiosity, of basically a green light acceptable or a red light of probably unacceptable for changes in fluid properties. So we wanted to start out with a fairly simple look at this, and at the moment, we are saying that anything that has less than a 10% change would be acceptable. Items that would be in the 10 to 20% change would be categorized as a case by case. And what we intend there, again, is it would indicate that you probably need a deeper dive to understand the very specific use case of the material, and perhaps go back and find the true data from the manufacturers of fluids as well, just to make sure that you're comfortable with the choice for that use case. Because some changes in properties, depending on the use case, may or may not be within your acceptable limit. And then finally, if it's greater than 20%, we deem that unacceptable, and you probably would want to think twice about what you're doing with that material and that fluid combination. And here we are looking at the matrix, and this is just a high-level summary of the 6 different categories that we have and where we're at in terms of populating the rows of data. And by populating, I mean we're tagging each material, whether it is acceptable, case by case, or unacceptable. And you can see that we are making pretty good progress here. Still need to get a little bit further along with some of these rows. Folks are promising to update the tables. I know some of these people still have some tests underway and are probably waiting to get a final dump to go in and update this table. But Puneeth, if you're on the call, if you want to add some color commentary, I'd certainly welcome any comments. Otherwise, we can have questions and move on to the next section here for our discussion today.
Yeah, I would mention that the natural esters is actually 74% complete. I think the table was completed. So
yeah, I looked at it this morning, and there must be something going on that there's a different table then, Kevin, because it was just 35.1% today. So I may have fumbled across it. It was the WIP table, the work in progress table that I looked at, but we'll have to go look at that because.
Well, send me the link and I'll make sure it's in the right place.
All right, I'll do that, Kevin. Thank you.
Great.
So that's good news. That's great news. Thank you for that update.
Feels a little bit like a contest, which categories are moving up faster.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the prize will be at the end of the day. Who hits like 99.9 or 100 first, right?
Well, PFCs are very close, it seems.
They made a big improvement in a short time, no doubt.
Yeah, I think one of the issues with completion of this may be the fact that we don't have the source of some of the materials that are on the table. So because some of them are kind of specific, so maybe we need to look at getting a supplier for contacting some of those other unfulfilled categories.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Well, I think the other point is we recognize that we will. I'm sorry, Rolf, didn't mean to step on you.
Yeah,
I think the team recognizes that we'll probably publish this without the matrix necessarily being 100%, and realizing that this will be a living activity that we will do our best to go back and regularly, kind of like the immersion requirements document is undergoing Rev 2. But we would certainly anticipate this being somewhat of a living activity, that it's just not put on the shelf and forgotten.
Thanks,
just
John,
want to
for
add,
summarizing.
Just want to add one detail, because there is we're talking about 2 groups, as you mentioned, John. Immersion requirements covering this, and also the materials compatibility group. There is a difference in approach, where the immersion requirements is only concerned about the fact that information needs to be reported on data sheets in terms of loss tangent and dielectric constant for a fluid, whereas the material compatibility group goes into more detail with methods and materials that are being used. So the immersion requirements document doesn't concern itself with, what's the way of work behind it. That's something that the material group is more focused on. Right, John?
Yeah, no, thank you, Rolf. I think that's great. Definitely the material group is a little bit more devil in the details kind of stuff there for sure.
Right. Okay. Let's
Tunis,
move on to...
Tunis, did you have a quick comment? I thought perhaps, and I didn't want to cut you off.
No, John, I just wanted to thank you for summarizing. I think you covered it all. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Yeah, and I want to compliment you guys again. This is one of the more detailed groups with a really massive amount of IP that is being opened up, which is great, which is fantastic to see. So thanks for the great effort there for everybody who's participating in that community. That's great. Let's move on to UL. This has been we were not able to properly prepare this part of the session. So, Michael, are you in the call at the moment? And if so, are you able to give some insight here?
Sure. Yeah, I'm here.
Ah, great stuff.
Yeah, no problem at all. I actually have been, I took a few days off because I wasn't accruing any days off. So company told me to walk away. So I did walk away for a few days, which was good. One thing I did do is I started reaching out to our groups that work with the technical committees, because as you know, and I might have mentioned this before, a lot of their industry side requirements are coming from the IEC. So it's not necessarily you all making this stuff up. It's the IEC who has serious interest in this technology, because the equipment that goes into these these immersion cooling apparatuses are basically an IEC 63368-1 certified products. So they've already taken a first step in the 3rd edition, which was recently published, that that sort of puts a sort of a mark to say, hey, we're interested in this, and we want to start to put some minimal safety requirements so that the equipment side and the installed equipment side and the immersion equipment side aren't going to have a problem with each other. So they're starting to look at that, and they did create, and this is sort of the thing that I was going to present at the summit, is some of the basic areas that they are starting to sort of recognize certain requirements. Would it be the liquids, insulating liquids, or would it be the hardware? So so I kind of reached out to our group that works with these various technical committees, and there is a structure and organization to all of this. And there are 2 things they mentioned, is that one, there may be many of the community members that their companies are represented in the technical committee, that it's specifically the TC108, which interfaces with the 62368. So it may be really smart to reach out, if you know who that person is, and start talking to those people to make sure that they are representing how you want to approach this area, this technology within the committees, because some of the members may be that are representing these technical committees may be a colleague in your organization. So that would be one step. Now, if there's companies out there today, and some of you on this community that want to join the technical committees, then that could be done through an application, and it needs to be accepted through the committee. But that's another path. The way our principal engineer told me is that although we are very visible in these technical committees, we only have 1 vote. So it really relies on the entire committees and the technical committees to make the right proper assumptions for this technology. And so it probably at this point, the technical committees, as far as I can see it, the TC108 has made its initial moves to identify certain areas that they want to make requirements for the industry, but they are looking for subject matter experts. And I can tell you right now, I will admit UL is not a subject matter expert in this area. It's going to be most of you. So the TC 108 will rely on the inputs of many of you to provide them the knowledge that you have. Now, there's two ways to do it again. One is the individual companies joining the national technical committees that exist under TC 108 and submit feedback into or proposals into the technical committees. The other approach, which was very interesting that I found, is that there is in these charters that exist, there is a way to have communication done through an arrangement called a liaison, and there's A, B, C. I think liaison A is probably the best thing, and that would be, would OCP as an organization represent the interest of the community as one entity into the technical committees? And one of the advantages of doing that is you don't have to go through a national technical committee. You can just go straight to the sort of the mothership TC 108 as a liaison and provide the input. So that option does exist. So that would be, Ralph, something I would just maybe throw it open to you to see how you want to go about it. Is does OCP have or want to become sort of a representative to the TC 108 as representing the output of this community, or would it be best for the individual companies to pursue their inputs and proposals into the various national committees?
Thanks, Michael. I do have an opinion on that, and I'll share that. But I do want to also make sure that that the community itself is able to speak out on this. But to start with my own insight, I believe that last suggestion would be the most logical one, since for a lot of the participants in this community, contributing to OCP is already a pretty big thing. Also taking into account the size of a lot of the contributing companies here, who are representing the majority of the vendor domain at the very least, and harmonizing the efforts that are already in place and being executed here in OCP would be, I think, the most logical approach, and I think also the most valuable. I'd be happy to, together with John as representatives of this community, to do a debrief in such a community. I think that would be fantastic.
Okay, so what I would do maybe is I'll set up a time that works for you, Rolf, and John, and with our administrator that handles the liaison program. And maybe we'll have a quick call so that because she'll have all the nuts and bolts of how that works and what's involved, and then from there, I think there's an application, obviously, and we can probably help with that and get that submitted to the right party. So I can kind of talk to Grace and see how she wants to take, what the next steps will be.
Sure, let's put that, let's set it in motion anyway, but also open the floor to people from the community if you have opinions. I think probably both angles would be valid, right? But anyone would like to comment or share insights or ideas on this?
Now, you said TC 108 was the group?
Yes, TC 108, and there's 2 layers.
That's so shock and vibration.
Nope, this is TC 108 for IEC. So
yes, I'm looking.
Yeah, you may be confusing ASHRAE TCs with the IEC TCs, so that could be possible.
Yeah.
Because a lot of ASHRAE folks are very accustomed to like TC 9.9 and some of the technical committees there. So different group, different numbering structure, I guess, right, Michael?
Yeah, it could be ISO, it could be ASTM is another one. IEC. So yeah, this is IEC. It'll be audio, video, information, communication technology product standard, safety standard.
Yeah, the normal mechanism to participate in any of those groups is to join ANSI, which is the representative from any of the US companies into the IEC. And then there'll be some group within ANSI in the US that you can join one of the technical committees, and then that forms the opinion for the US, which gets forwarded to the IEC committee. Joining the committee directly is an unusual. The IEC committee directly is a very unusual thing. Generally, the IEC committees are made up of national committees, so the only way that an individual can work directly with a committee is if you're invited to present as a subject matter expert.
Right. So and you're correct. So if you're, let's say, if you're in the U.S., you join what they call the TAG, right? Technical committee, TAG TC 108, and you have joined a national TAG, and that would be the U.S. TAG. If you're in a country in Europe, they have their own different tags on the country, and that rolls up into the sort of the TC 108, the main TC 108. So in the case of the liaison, basically there is no requirement to join the national tag.
If you're a subject matter expert, you're allowed to present, but I don't think that you can actually participate in the formation of the standard.
Well, let's take this into account. I'm a little bit more concerned of the time right now. We've got 20 minutes left for the call.
Yep. But anyway, that's sort of what I wanted to just touch base, so that maybe people start thinking about what they need to do. And if one other key thing would be, hey, if you know that you might be in one of these committees, you might find out who that is, and start having that conversation with individuals, so that they're well versed on the information that's needed.
Thank you, Michael. I'd like to invite everybody, if you have insight or opinion on this, to send us a message. Email addresses of the project leads are not on this slide, but on various other slides, but also on the wiki. We can open the discussion also with Michael attached, and see what the best way forward is.
Yep.
For now, let's thank you very much, Michael, for this solid debrief without any preparation time. Thanks for the effort, and you did well. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
I'd like to move on to, I guess, David. Are you on the call?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi.
Hi.
Right, so David has been doing some excellent work with a group of contributing members here, representing a broad spectrum of the immersion domain. They've been working on a pitch deck which has come across this community call some time ago, which was fairly extensive at the time. They've done some great work on reducing that footprint and getting to a brief pitch which represents the interest of and the relevance of immersion that is for public use. David, do you want to take the screen?
Yes, I'm ready. Just waiting your approval.
You have it.
Great. So
you should be able to share your screen.
Yes, you see?
Yes.
Great. So I will start. Welcome to our presentation about new generation of data centers. And that presentation was developed with our team since June. So let's have a look for evolution of data center cooling. Legacy air-cooled solution were based on HEL or row level cooling, and had issues with high level energy consumption, limited capacity per rack, noise, and limitation for high performance processors. After that, rear door heat exchangers saves energy by making them smaller. And next one is on-chip cooling, resolves a chip problem, but 40% of server heat must be removed by air, and leak can cause a catastrophic failure. So immersion solution / carbon footprint, total cost of ownership, eliminates chillers and evaporative coolers, fans, noise, reduce IT load, no water is consumed, pollution is not a problem, cools hot chips, and saves space by supporting dense racks. There is three kinds of immersion cooling. First one is single phase. The coolant is always in liquid phase. It does not change the phases. Heated coolant is circulated by pumps or by natural convection. And through a heat exchanger, transfer heat to the water loop. Many generic low-cost coolants are globally available. Second one is single phase immersion, but with vertical rack. It's the same approach with previous one, and coolant in server chassis isolates all electronics from air and other environmental factors, resulting in minimal downtime. And coolant temperature at the chassis outlet is hot enough for commercial reuse. And two-phase immersion horizontal rack, energy transferred from the servers into the fluid causes a portion to boil off into a gas, and rising vapor condenses on water-cooled condenser. Coolant change phase, providing higher heat transfer with extremely higher density. So, in new decade, data center faced new challenges, which become more crucial and need to be resolved in order to provide sustainable development to whole industry. And now let's look what we get with immersion solution. So data center with immersion servers don't need equipment like air conditioners, chillers, cooling towers. At the same time, require smaller UPSs, genset, less white space, which give the chance to reduce embodied carbon footprint up to 50%. The high temperature outlet liquid allow to heat up the water for heating and tap water system with valuable goods production. No need investments in heat pumps, which provide instant cost reducing without additional support from any other institutes. Exclude all fans in servers, bearings, and chiller refrigerants without evaporative cooling. Servers are safe as brand new and lifetime extended up to 10 years. Dry cooler are sufficient if the ambient dry bulb temperature is below 45 degrees Celsius, and so evaporative cooling generally is not needed. On the other hand, all immersion data center power input is lower than conventional IT load, which makes sense for global power grid. With simplified heat transfer system, reduced twice energy system, smaller space, and avoiding of duplicate components, CapEx can be reduced by 20–40%. Reduced IT power thanks to eliminating the fans. The immersion in the UPS are fit to 5%, which give 40–60% of OpEx savings. And less components and durable solution exclude requirements in air filters, fans changing, reduced power system, and altogether gives 40–60% savings on the total cost of ownership. Immersion is extremely energy efficient technology. The general answer is that immersion solutions are overall more efficient with PUE extremely close to 1 relative to air-cooled data center with PUE closer to 2. On the graph, you can see that total energy consumption in immersion are lower than just IT load in conventional case. At the server level, absence of air cooling fans reduce energy consumption, and generally servers use less energy than the cooler environment. And there is much less components that consume energy and higher temperature of the coolant, and it explains why our system 20 times less in energy consumption for heat transfer. Water is used only in extremely hot climate, and usage decreased by 95%. UPS energy consumption is also go down due to lower IT load. With the ratio of IT load to floor space up to 50 kilowatt per square meter, increased by 10–15% capacity due to absence of the server fans, high performance servers with extended quantity of powerful chips, fewer switches per server, fewer PDUs and cables, no raised floor, no hot or cold aisle, 2 times lower the height of floor, it means more space for holes. Even if the temperature of liquid is 50 degrees, the temperature of the chip is 60 degrees, which is much lower than in air-cooled solution. Also, we resolve the problem with hotspots. Coolant is more efficient than the air in transferring heat away from the IT. No condensation, short circuits, corrosion or statics, clean environment, no dust, no fans, always high performance, exclude possibility of zinc whiskers appearance, long-term reliability. Liquid creates a protective barrier between the environment and the IT equipment. The servers are located in a protective environment that prevents the spread of fire and prevent the impact of sound shockwave of the fire extinguishing system, prevent the ingress of water into the servers, no open or short circuits due to contamination. There is no air circulation that can spread fire and remove air conditioners from the hall, which is a potential source of fire. Immersion solution exclude the noise of air ventilation. Silence in the data hall improve the comfort of the personnel. Server racks can be placed in office or residential areas. Modular immersed edge data center can be connected to the heating system in the building. Higher density reduced the surface demand. The power input is reduced 2 times. No need water supply. Servers are placed in protective environment and can be used in harsh environments which can contain the dust, sand, industrial areas, or sea, salt air. And immersion systems are ready to be installed in existing room. So that's all. And please use the links for the contributors. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, David. I think this was excellent. If there is any suggestions, because we are constrained on time now, if there are any suggestions to modify this deck any further, please do contact anyone from this group, from this work group. I'll share my screen again. Please contact any one of these participants or David directly for any further suggestions. This deck, as it is, will very likely be part of the introduction session for the engineering sessions at the Global Summit. There is also, in addition, in the chat, I posted a link to a YouTube video which contains this presentation without the voiceover. And that's a 3.5 minute pitch video, which actually is pleasant to watch. So I can recommend going down that link as well.
Rolf, I have one comment to make. If the co-authors of that presentation could consider, firstly, I think it's a great initiative, and I think that it's really positive. To have that pitch deck. I think it's going to be a great resource. But I would like to look at 2 contradictory statements. And the one is that there's statements around the capacity of the systems, 200 and 500 kilowatts per tank. Yet we are stating that there is no chillers in use. And I'm not aware of systems available at those sort of capacities without the need to reduce the inlet temperatures to the immersion tanks to be able to sort those sort of capacities.
Those do exist.
Great, notification. So 500 kilowatt I mentioned for 2-phase immersion cooling, and actually they have such approach without chillers. So if we talk about 1-phase cooling, there is I mentioned there 100 kilowatt per rack. So I think it's also can achieved without chiller.
Yeah. So for everybody's understanding, it's a pitch deck that covers the entire spectrum of immersion cooling, not a specific vendor or a specific technology or specific solution, and it presents the potential of liquid of immersion cooling in general, right?
Yes.
Is that sufficient as a response, or is this something that should be further mitigated in the deck?
I think that some sort of clarification statement should be made there, because that was my first reaction too, is that, you know, many of the systems do use some sort of means to remove heat, and you know, I think some sort of clarification would be good.
Well, I think
can you? We're running out of time, everyone. Any further constructive feedback? This is good input, right? I agree. Any additional comments? Please put it in the chat so David can pick it up, and the community can work on that.
I think we should place there examples of such deployment to show that it is how it works, and there will be no questions about that.
So let's take that back to the group that's working on this to finalize that session. I would like to move towards the Global Summit sessions, just to give everybody an update of what the plan is now. Because there are engineering tracks, and one engineering track is dedicated to advanced cooling solutions, or actually to advanced cooling in general, which also includes advanced cooling facilities. So we are now joining, we're now going together with ACS and ACF in a dedicated room, in a dedicated schedule on cooling. And here is what is on the screen right now is an extract of all the sessions that are organized and scheduled that relate directly to immersion cooling. And part of the first part of the day is going to be dedicated to the community work and community efforts that have been done. Opening the day with a short introduction session to cooling environments. That's going to be done by John Bean, myself, and Don Mitchell. It's going to be immersion community update by John and myself. There will be the presentation for the immersion requirements. Then there's going to be a material compatibility detailed session by John and Punit. Then following that is going to be a presentation by Andy Young and Eric Riddell about circular economy and in immersion cooling. And that is the presentation of the marketplace product collaboration between Asperitas and IT Renew. And after that, that will be followed by a presentation by Microsoft, which is going to cover a lot of very interesting material around their lessons learned with 2 years of two-phase immersion cooling. Which is also going to elaborate further on how Microsoft is embracing immersion cooling in general. There's going to be some other sessions after that relating to cold plate and rear door coolers, but around lunchtime, or immediately after lunchtime, Michael will be presenting the UL presentation when it comes to immersion cooling and equipment certification and compliance. So this is the track that we currently have scheduled for your information. If there's any questions regarding this track, please send them directly to myself and to John. Simply because we are out of time, I'm gonna close the call. I will move the topics for the next year to the next community session next month. Is there anybody who wants to, who feels the urge of stating something before closing the call? Okay, I'd like to thank you all for your participation this month. Looking forward to seeing you all around the Global Summit. That's going to be the next gathering, and otherwise in the next community call. We'll stop.
Thanks, Rolf.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.